This week is all about games and these players, all these leagues, Project B, Unrivaled, WNBA, whatever. They're all playing games. I like games too. So with that being said, let's get on this bus and get the rolling. What it do, peeps? When I was a kid, my grandmother and I loved to watch The Price is Right. She watched Price is Right every day. I think it came on at 10 or 11, and then right after that, Young and the Restless came on. Victor Newman, Nikki, all them folks. Still remember them names. But The Price is Right. It had a, it had a, it had a, it had a vibe. Bob Barker with the little skinny mic with the little ball on top. And in honor of Bob Barker, today's show is dedicated to The Price is Right. And on The Price is Right, they always had, you come down, you come down to the floor, and Roddy would call out those contestants. So with that being said, the people on the bus today. Sue Bird, come on down. You're the next contestant on The Price is Right. Rosgold Wnba, come on down. You're the next contestant on The Price is Right. And for you at home, they always had like a prize. Usually always something small. Always something small, but you had to bid on it. Sometimes it was big stuff, it'd be like $750, maybe 900, whatever. But with that being said, this is what we're going to go for to get one of y'all on stage. Give me the retail price of this without going over. And the person that's closest, I'll get in touch with you and I will ship you this Caitlin Clark card. It's a beautiful card. I love the way SGC, I love the way they put the black border around their cards. Always clean. This was like one of the first Caitlin Clark cards I got when she was just getting on the radar of a lot of people. And I swooped in quick and got this card. Beautiful card. Beautiful card. Beautiful card. Put the closest price that I pay for this card in the comments. Whoever's the closest gets this card. So they get you on stage. I ain't giving no kisses. I ain't kissing nobody. I ain't trying to get in trouble with my wife. So I'm gonna leave that to Bob. Bob was that smooth player boy. Bob was kissing all the women. He was kissing all the women when he was doing The Price is Right. I can't do it on mine. But first up, Angel McCoughtry, former Atlanta. She played with the Atlanta Dream for a number of years, from like 2009 to like 2019. She played a long time with the Dream. Played for another team. Played overseas a lot. She stated the obvious on the Rosgold Wnba show. It's called podcast. It's called Good Follow. And she basically said, she was talking about Project B, and she was talking about how the players have always liked to go overseas, which is it's really, we know that. But when I was watching the podcast, and I'll leave a link to the podcast in the description, when I was watching the podcast, I noticed how Rosgold was really asking the questions about Project B, but leaving out a bunch of stuff. And I was like, you know what? I always like to know when I'm watching a podcast, who funds the podcast? So I went to the back computer. And Roz, you can come on up. You can come on up, Roz. Come on up. Come up on stage. Because see, Roz wanted to be one of the Beat Chef beauties. But Roz talked a lot of noise about Caitlin Clark last year. Said Caitlin Clark needed to do more for black women, needed to basically kiss their butts. The women in the league that paved the way, and all kind of crap. Speak on social issues. I made a video about it called Caitlin Clark versus the World, and Roz was one of the people that was against Caitlin Clark. She still is to a certain degree. But I was looking up who funds the Good Follow podcast. And I came across this company called Meadowlark Media. And then I looked and noticed who started it. It was a guy named Dan Lebertard. And Dan, if you know anybody, if anybody watched ESPN, Dan Lebertard was on ESPN for years. Now he's doing his own podcast, his own thing. But he co-founded this company with a man named John Skipper. And that's when my spidey sense went off. And I said, oh, John, vampire, highest order. John Skipper was the former vice president, basically ran ESPN for a number of years. In the good days of ESPN, ran it quite well. Well, John left ESPN. He starts this Meadowlark Media with Dan Lebertard. That's basically what puts out Dan Lebertard's show. Well, they partnered up with DraftKings to produce content on the women's sports side. And that's where the Good Follow podcast comes in. They had an original host. I can't think of her name right now, but Roz took over in January. And I kind of remembered the commercials for it. Like I said, Roz is kind of low key. But then I got to thinking, John Skipper is also one of the big investors in Unrivaled. And that's when I was like, ah. So John Skipper has basically partnered up with DraftKings, and he's left the media company that he built with Dan Lebertard. But before he did, he put Roz Gold in place. Now, if you know anything about Roz Gold, ESPN, so on and so forth, but she was also the sideline reporter during the first season of Unrivaled. So she works for Unrivaled. By extension, she works for John Skipper because he's one of the heavyweights in that company. Remember, that's the one that Nafisa Collier's husband said that they leaned on. He's the one that basically brokered the deal with TNT. I'll leave a link to that in the description because it's right from Unrivaled's website. So when you hear Roz Gold or Wnba speak from this day forward, you understand that she works for Unrivaled. She works for John Skipper, whether you like it or not. She works for Fee Collier. So she's going to always speak on their behalf in a positive manner. And that's the reason why she let Angel McCoughtry, which you'll see when you watch the video, she just let her talk. And then she asked her little vague questions about, well, but what about Project B? And I thought the players wanted to stay in America. And like, we know the players didn't want to stay in America. She knows the players don't want to stay in America. The players have been going overseas for decades. Even as recently as this year and last year, as soon as the WNBA season is over, these players hop on a plane and they fly to Turkey, they fly to Israel, they fly to China to play for whoever. So that's one of the reasons why the WNBA is really not concerned with Project B, because you're competing for American dollars. Many of the players, I wish them the best of luck that are going to Project B. When they go to Project B, it'll be no different than Angel McCoughtry going overseas. Nobody was checking for Angel McCoughtry on TV when she went overseas. Nobody was buying a streaming package to see Angel McCoughtry play. No one is going to watch Jewel Lloyd, Alyssa Thomas, NECA, or Jonquel Jones. Nobody's paying a package to watch them play basketball. It's the land of misfit toys. When they leave this bad boy, it's back to football, it's back to college basketball, it's back to ping pong. That's why I said they're playing games. They think that we are really that interested. We're really not. We wish you the best. Good luck. Have fun. Go make your money. Now, Sue Bird. Sue, come on up. And for Sue Bird, I want you to tell me what the retail price of this wonderful Paige Bueckers card in the Yukon jersey and everything. Yukon. PSA 10, one of the top grading companies that people grade cards with. They actually bought the company that the Caitlin Clark was in, SGC. They actually bought them. But Paige Bueckers, tell me what the retail price is. Put the retail price for Paige and Caitlin in the comments. Whoever is close to the actual retail price of these cards, I will send you this card. We'll get your information. I will send it to you personally. These cards are from my personal collection. They are not affiliated with Caitlin Clark or Paige Bueckers. These are mine. I had to say that. YouTube requires me to say that. So just know, anytime I put a card up, it's from mine. With that being said, put it in the comments. We'll get the card to you. When I say we, I mean me. But I'm Bart Barker now. I'm Black Barker. So, Sue Bird. Sue Bird, I know you're on my show, and I know you've had some trouble. See, back in September, you were at a tech show, and you had NECA on your show. NECA had the Matrix sunglasses on, hiding her vampirism. She a vampire leech. And she was sitting there talking to you about the contract, and y'all were talking about when y'all bargained. So Sue Bird, I'm trying to figure out, I want to ask you before we get into the Showcase Showdown. I just want to ask you, are you okay? Because NECA left you. NECA went to Project B, and you're the owner of the Storm. How do you feel that NECA left you? How do you feel? I mean, just let us know. Now, Sue Bird had a podcast with Megan Rapinoe, and it's a 11-minute little podcast, and I'm gonna leave a link to it. But she said some stuff in that podcast. She too said the same things Angel McCautry said. That, she was trying to be coy about going overseas, and she talked about her going overseas because she played overseas a lot too. And I thought the players wanted to be stateside and all that, and then she basically said, "Nah, they like to go travel. They like to get their money. Women love to travel. Don't ever think a woman don't like to travel. They like to travel, especially these players. These sisters in the NBA, WNBA, they like to travel." So, she spoke on that with Megan Rapinoe, and they talked about the money. And she asked her, you think it's gonna be it's gonna be a conflict of interest? And now it's a conflict of interest. Now it's a conflict of interest. They've known about Unrivaled, they've known about Project B for the longest, and they kept quiet. But see, now they're playing games with each other because the feelings have gotten hurt. See, some of the players feel hurt that NECA has left them when he took that money and left them hanging. It's natural. It's natural. You got Fee, who's been AWOL for the longest. You got Breonna Stewart, who's been AWOL for the longest. And remember, Kathy told the players, get on those Zoom meetings. But Sue Bird basically said, she said the quiet thing out loud. She basically said that, hey, that they like going abroad.
Totally. Yeah, we understand that. Anyways, it's another thing in the mix. We'll just say another gal at the party. NECA obviously is involved in it. She's the president of the Wnba. I always have to say that slow. 3 of its vice presidents, Stewie, Fee, Kelsey Plum, are all involved in Unrivaled. Obviously, Fee and Stewie, the co-founders in these rival leagues. What does that mean for the path forward? Let's just start here. Will this impact negotiations on the new CBA?
Now, before she says that, keep in mind, she could have asked NECA the same damn thing when she had NECA on stage at that tech conference in September. How does you, Brianna, and Fee affect negotiations with all y'all being involved with other entities. And you've been present. Mind you, keep in mind, NECA hadn't came out as Project B at the time, but she could have asked NECA about those two at that time, and she didn't.
I mean, I hope not. If anything, it will just highlight the fact that there are options. And I don't think that's that much different from previous negotiations. There's
Of course, it's not. That's why the league is not worried about Project B. People are worried about Project B. The league is not worried about Project B, folks. These players have been going across seas. A pair of lips says anything. They do talking here about activism. They love going to their parents' house and making that good money. She's saying the truth out loud now when she could have been real and upfront from the summer since she's had her podcast.
always been options. What it gets into, and the part that you touched on, is the fact that now players have equity in some of those options. And that's, I think, where this whole like conflict of interest comes up. But I have to, I mean, like, I'll speak from my own perspective, my own opinion. I'm not obviously speaking for, in this case, it would be NECA, AT, Stewie, or Fee.
Yeah.
But I just think when the WNBA is healthy and successful, everything else like funnels from that. And I think that part of it sometimes gets lost in these conversations. And we just said the money talks and people follow the money. Absolutely. But the WNBA, even though it's lacked, and I'm the first to tell you, it's lacked in salary for a lot of years.
Yeah.
It hasn't lacked in some other things. And I think
agree.
when players, I know you asked about the negotiations.
This part is something that is hugely important. Pay attention to what she says.
But just to kind of take it wherever I'm going, I think what sometimes gets lost in this conversation when people talk about, what's this player going to do? Or what would that player do? Or what would you do? What's your number to go to this place? Or why would you play here? What gets lost when it comes to the WNBA is playing in America.
Yeah.
Being able to capitalize on endorsements, which now is a real player for these players.
Yeah.
But being able to capitalize on endorsements, a lot of these contracts, now it's not that you can't create a new type of contract, but I know my shoe deal, I had to play in the WNBA to get my money. So a lot of the ecosystem that we live in as Americans playing in the WNBA revolves around playing in America.
Yeah.
And so I just think that
it's the center of the universe for sure.
And another thing that gets lost, like if there's not a league, if we be dramatic in the U.S., do Americans care about what's happening overseas? I don't know. That would be I guess, hopefully we never have to find out. But
no.
The other thing that I don't think gets talked about enough when it comes to people trying to guess what players would do. First of all, it's such an individual decision based on your finances, based on your life, where you are, how old you are, all the things. But second of all is, to piggyback off the building a brand, like you want to play in the best league against the best players and feel valued. And speaking for somebody that played in Russia, we played in EuroLeague and there was stakes to those EuroLeague games. There was also a lot of really bad Russian league games that we had to play in. And it can be mind-numbing. And nobody knows. Some of those EuroLeague games, by the way, are some of the best ever. I say this often. That nobody got to see. Nobody knows. And, to like make the point in a really dumb way, I don't know that you win an ESPY for what you did in EuroLeague. You don't win, you don't get the what's it really for?
Legitimization.
Yeah. You just don't get the notice that you should get if you're not playing in the US.
She said the most important part of this, and this was a great interview. This is a great podcast because she got hurt. She got hurt and she actually spoke the truth. I'm going to leave a link to this one because she talked about one of the things that I talked about in a previous video about getting stuff, like whoever's paying, you're speaking on their favor. That's how a lot of these podcasts have been co-opted by Project B. There was people that didn't know what to say about Project B. And so they knew about the Saudi thing and the women's rights part and their pro-women's podcast. So they were speaking negatively about Project B that first week. Project B slid them a note with some money. Now all of them are backtracking. A lot of them are backtracking big time. Now they're Project B, and they're all doing all these think pieces on what Project B isn't and what Project B isn't involved in, and I'm sitting there laughing. But Sue Bird, the last part of this podcast, she said the greatest thing. I told you a couple weeks ago, follow the shoes. Always follow the shoes. Caitlin Clark is not going to play in Project B for Nike. If Nike ain't involved in Project B, she ain't playing in Project B. Period. Point blank. Like she said, my shoe deal, because she has a shoe deal. Her shoe deal was contingent on her playing in the WNBA. See, if you go back to what Kathy Engelbert said, Kathy Engelbert was not trying to diss Caitlin Clark. She was telling Fee an actual fact because she knew Fee didn't know business. Because remember, Fee didn't get signed to Jordan Brand until the summer of this year. So when she said they wanted her to sign her deal after she joined the league. That's the part you got to pay attention to. They wanted her to sign the deal after she joined the league because it raised her platform and it's part of her contract. WNBA, no other place, because the majority of them shoes that she's selling are going to get sold in the United States. It doesn't pay Caitlin Clark to go overseas to China. It just don't. It doesn't go overseas to do a circus run with some old, bitter basketball players. Ain't good for her brand, ain't good for her business. And I'm glad Sue Bird said the obvious. You're going to make your bread where you were born. Yes, those players can go make $2 million. They could have always went and made $2 million if they were popular. Always. Money is always bigger overseas for these players. Always has been. I'm going to do a video later on this week because I still got to do a lot more game shows. But this episode of Price is Right, I had to do. I had to get them on stage. They're not going to make it to the Showcase Showdown. Rosgold Wnba is not going to make it. She couldn't be Beat Chef Beauty. She couldn't showcase the cards for me. She's shiesty. And she don't like Caitlin Clark. She did that last year. She made it known that Caitlin Clark needed to tap dance and praise the sisterhood. I made a video about that. She made a point that said that Caitlin Clark needs to be speaking on activist issues without being prompted. Those were her words. So she could never work with me. Rosa Wnba will never get to the Showcase Showdown. She going back to the audience. She ain't even getting the partying gift. Period. Angel McCoughtry ain't getting to the Showcase Showdown. She wasn't even on the show. Because Angel McCoughtry is 39 years old. Bitter. Jealous of the younger players and the money they're making. Bitter. Sue Bird ain't making it to the Showcase Showdown because a snake got bit by a snake and NECA struck first and she's hurt. Her player for her Seattle Storm, who she's a minority owner, bailed on her and was on her podcast and didn't even mention it. Didn't mention nothing about Project B, only talked about the CBA and their time as presidents and what they were doing to get that contract back in 2019. And for her to turn her back on her, Sue Bird is hurting for certain. But as Bob Barker says, get your pet spayed and neutered. And until next time, peace.